focus, but we're also focused on driving what I would call domestic direct investors, which is encouraging Nigerians to invest in their country. We see a fair bit of Nigerian participation in the stock markets already, but we don't see as much when it comes to direct investments.
Right. But that is a good focus, though. I mean, your critics, though, I mean, the government's critics say that by holding back from coming up with corrective sort of business-friendly policies for as long as you did, I mean, for 6 months, you know, this country didn't have a cabinet. And therefore, you were providing little direct or comfort to those who play with the 94 trillion that you need to kind of fill the gap. That essentially you've shortchanged the Nigerian economy.
Well, I mean, whatever happened in the past, in reality, it is in the past. The only thing we can do now is to focus on the future and the things that we will do in the future to improve business conditions, to improve the experience of investors in Nigeria, and to encourage investors to continue to participate in Nigeria.
And is the apparent gain on the dollar the result of, you know, central banks' policies? I mean, are those just market? I mean, that may not be directly your province, but we've got you here. Is that as a result of central bank policies and therefore government policies, or just market forces acting independently?
I think it was a number of things. The market reacted in relation to a new policy that the central bank announced. So it wasn't just the central bank's policy alone, it was also the market's reception to it.
Right, okay. Now, one of the things you've also done, which people have called for a long time, is the easing of visa restrictions. Just tell us how that's going to work now. What difference? Because, I mean, you've had visa on arrival and all that sort of thing, and one of the big challenges people face is just getting a visa to come into Nigeria.
The traditional principle of diplomacy is reciprocity. So if I need a visa to come to your country, if you need a visa to come to my country, you do likewise. The recent reforms are around considering Nigeria's own interest rather than simply the principle of reciprocity.
Yeah, because obviously you need the foreign investor here more than they need you there.
Correct. And for a number of countries where Nigeria has a strategic commercial interest, the object is to have a visa policy that is receptive and supportive of Nigeria's aspirations.
Okay, Yewande Sadiku, head of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Now, investment in infrastructure will help Uganda's economy grow by 5.5% in 2016-17, faster than in the current fiscal year. That's according to the International Monetary Fund. The East African country has various multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects in progress, including hydropower dams, highways, and a crude oil refinery. Well, my colleague Frank Partridge discussed this with business correspondent Bode Oshosomi and began by asking him whether this was possible.
Well, there are several issues facing Uganda at this point in time. One is the political instability and the risk that confers. Museveni's started his 5th term, and the analysts are saying he's grooming his son, and that line of thinking, of course, has its risk. Then secondly, of course, is this budget that has been presented. They have been successful in easing the environment through drops in interest rates. Interest rates were as high as 16% last April, and they've gone down from 16% to as low as 11.5% this year, hoping that it will result in expansion in credit in the environment. So that is supposed to be working, as well as a lot of innovation in easing the business environment, improving use of technology for trade, within the context of an East African Monetary Union area, which they hope will come into being in the year 2024.
That's some distance away, isn't it?
Yeah,
7 years away.
Yes, but they're moving very quickly towards this, realizing this, trying to also copy Rwanda as a model in terms of being a very efficient environment. And then there's, of course, the issue of oil. They've discovered oil.
Right, now I was going to ask about the oil. The discovery was a few years back now, but of course to get the infrastructure on hand to bring in the foreign investment that's required to get it up and running, That's not straightforward, is it? How are they progressing on that?
Well, they've signed a lot of production agreements with Tullow Oil, with Total, and as you know, when the oil is there, the companies very quickly do the needful in terms of moving in. I'm not sure where they are on the trajectory or projection, but obviously, if they're moving from not having produced oil to be an oil producer, you're going to have a discontinuity in growth, a huge leap in growth. But more importantly for them is managing the whole era of now being an oil producer. What are they going to do with ensuring they have the right levels of indigenous participation? How would they ensure that they save the right amounts, putting in the right legislation and so on, so that they don't...
As we've seen in Nigeria, oil changes the whole economic landscape.
The whole economic landscape. How ready are they for it? And in the context of a leadership that has been there for 30 years, you know, it could actually become quite toxic.
You talked about political instability, but the fact that Maserere is thinking of handing over to another member of the family, surely that would ensure political stability in Uganda?
Well, Museveni, well, the rumor is that he's grooming his son. His son is in the army, and many are saying he's likely to be the one to take over. I really don't know, but from the context of business, obviously business would still go on, but the fear is you could have changes in political direction fairly quickly if people are dissatisfied with what is on the ground, and that could result in more instability going forward. But the central bank has been very conservative, and they've been very careful in managing the economy, and one hopes that even with some of the political challenges they face in Uganda, this won't hurt the growth aspirations.
What about the reducing interest rates? Has that actually freed up a few more loans for businesses and individuals?
It should, but the challenge, of course, is actually getting good credits. If the environment is not right, the expansion may not actually happen. It's one thing to have lower rates, it's another to have good credit risks that you can create. So I think the overall challenge of the economy is to make it more business friendly in terms of the environment, make it more amenable for growth, and provide the right easing environment so people have access to credits, but all within the context of a political environment that lends stability and not instability to what they're trying to do.
And I suppose one other issue that they've got to contend with is the continuing troubles in South Sudan, which has affected trade between the two countries.
Yeah, they have a lot of problematic neighbors that they obviously have to deal with, and that, I think, is why the Union, the East African Union, is also important, but it's easier to handle some of these issues within the context of integration between countries where they are like-minded. The Union in East Africa is more likely than what you have in West Africa, because if you look at the countries in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, their culture, their language, their ways of doing things are much more similar. So there's already a kind of if you like, familiarity, brotherhood amongst them. So it's more like formalizing what already exists.
So in a sentence, Bodhi, is this 5.5% target achievable?
Let me just say somewhat.
Business analyst Bode Oshosami there talking to Frank Partridge. Now, the heir to the Samsung empire and 4 other top executives from the world's biggest smartphone maker have been indicted on multiple charges, including bribery and embezzlement, according to South Korean prosecutors. The team probing the corruption and power abuse scandal that has seen President Park Geun-hye impeached said today that they had indicted Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong for bribery, embezzlement, hiding of assets overseas, and perjury. We're heading to a break, but plenty more to come, including sport and entertainment.